We've suffered 198 incidents of hare-coursing since the season started when crops were harvested at the beginning of July. It's had a huge effect on your mental health. The fear, the worry, the intimidation that you're very likely to suffer when you go out, and also the damage, £30,000 worth of damage caused by hare-coursers coming in onto the farm here.
Police vow to clamp down on hare-coursing. We hear from the farmer who's been assaulted 11 times. Beef sector leaders call for a better pricing system as the market eases ahead of their industry showcase. And we speak to the farmer who's trying to make fertiliser from air and water. Welcome to the Farmers Weekly podcast. I'm Johan Tasker.
I'm Louise Impey.
And I'm Hugh Brown.
More about hare-coursing later, but first our top story. The government's announced plans to slash tariffs on 100 food items imported into the UK as it tries to bring food price inflation under control for consumers. It's the latest plan following reports that government ministers wanted to cap food prices altogether, an idea roundly rejected by Britain's big supermarket chains. Well, NFU President Tom Bradshaw also condemned the move, warning that farmers are already in danger of seeing their profitability squeezed beyond breaking point. Here is Tom Bradshaw speaking to NFU members.
As farmers, we're seeing hugely inflated costs of production at the moment, red diesel, fertiliser prices, energy costs, and we cannot absorb these costs at a farm level and continue to run profitable farming and growing businesses. Some of that is coming about because of government policy, such as changes to standing charge, Food Standards Agency charges being increased to abattoirs. These are adding inflation, along with the national insurance increases that have been seen. The 7 golden rules of the Grocery Code Adjudicator mean that these unexpected cost increases have to be passed up the retail supply chain. There is no way that they can be absorbed at a farm level and see resilient, thriving farming businesses. Now, obviously, farmers do not set retail prices, but I know that the retailers have been pretty strong in the way that they've reacted to this. Members have been very vociferous about the concern that this means that there'll be lower farm gate prices, and we all need a functioning, thriving supply chain so that farmers can get fair returns for the risks that we are taking and consumers can get access to affordable British product, not just now, but in the long term. And this short-termism is something that does not build the food security of the country into the long term, which is something that 70 million consumers need.
As NFU President Tom Bradshaw, we'll be talking about this idea of price capping in just a moment. But Louise, this new idea, this announcement that the government is going to suspend tariffs on imports of 100 food products, we don't know very much about this. They have insisted that it won't be any products that are produced by UK farmers in any major way. Instead, it will be things like chocolate, nuts, dried fruit and biscuits. Now, we do produce biscuits, but it's all a bit hazy.
Yeah, we need a bit more information on this, don't we? So what they've actually said is that they're going to suspend these tariffs on more than 100 products, but they've only named 4 of them so far. And we're told that the longer list is going to come out later this week or next week. But the products that we've been told about are biscuits, chocolate, dried fruit and nuts. Well, immediately the biscuit one sounds some alarm bells to me because, of course, we produce biscuit wheat in this country and we do have biscuit production going on. So, yeah, what we don't want to do, obviously, is flood the market with cheap imports that make us uncompetitive. But they have been at pains to point out that it's not going to include products that are widely produced by British farmers. So I think we can't really say much more on this until we see the longer list and we understand a bit more about what their intentions are. The only other thing which I think is really relevant is that they are going to suspend these tariffs until 2028. So that's really quite a long time. So we need to see that list and then just understand a bit more about whether that is going to affect our farmers or not.
Hugh, as it stands, it seems a bizarre set of food products, these 4 products: chocolate, dried fruit and nuts, and biscuits. Not exactly a healthy, balanced diet, even if it is meant to help consumers during this cost of living crisis.
Yeah, and they keep talking about the cost of living crisis, and I get that for many households, costs are just off the scale. This isn't a cost of living crisis. This is a lack of growth crisis. And if you want to solve it, take some of the regulation away, take some of the tax away, and help business to flourish and stop being a control freak.
We look forward to receiving the full comprehensive list of those 100 food products on which tariffs are going to be suspended. Hugh, you talk about control. This comes on the back of the announcement this week that the government wanted to cap food prices, as something that the government then dismissed and said it had no such plans to do. What's going on?
Yeah, it was a bit of a kite-flying exercise, wasn't it? I mean, the S&P obviously started this, and the S&P supposedly is still going ahead with capping the cost of various staples in Scottish supermarkets. No doubt there'll be a rush to the border to buy your flour capped at whatever it is a kilo. Yeah, they talked about it. They flew the kites and then got pretty quickly bashed down, didn't they? I mean, the heads of former heads of retail came out first, and then very quickly, all of the main retail people basically lined up and said, this is absolute nonsense. And if you actually want to help us, then get rid of all the crap that you make us do around increasing NI, all the other rubbish and nonsense that you've put into place, which affects employers and adds massive cost to our business. Then we might be able to get a bit more competitive with what we offer to consumers, because we're not paying billions to you in unnecessary employment tax or tied up in red tape, which means now we can't sack anyone on the first day if they fail to show up because they're sick. They can claim sick leave from day one. So yes, it was pretty roundly rejected.
Louise, this story first reported by the Financial Times, then making big news in other newspapers. It then disappeared almost as quickly as it came about. We heard Tom Bradshaw there in the audio, also dismissed out of hand as being a ridiculous idea by many of the supermarkets.
Absolutely. It was really interesting to see, wasn't it, the retailer pushback that came out really very, very quickly. So I think the word preposterous was used by one of them, which tells you all you need to know, really. I mean, this is like supermarket socialism, isn't it? And we know, I think, from history and previous experience, not in this country, but in other countries, that controls like that, they cause real problems. You know, they disrupt the supply chains, they cause shortages of certain products, and obviously they squeeze margins. And that's not very desirable at the moment. And as Hugh rightly pointed out, you know, the inflationary pressures were already there. Obviously, the Iran war has just kicked them on a bit, but they were there due to the government's policies. So really, it was a pointless exercise. It's if you look back over time a bit, you know, they have tried this in other countries in Europe and further afield, and it has actually never really worked. I think they tried it or did it in Hungary. They certainly did it in Greece when they were in that really bad inflationary time, and you know, that's a lower wage economy. And there was a report written which says these measures never work because it ends up costing the consumer just the same amount of money because the prices of other products go up to compensate. So, yeah, they got put right back in their box, and that's not going to happen. As Hugh also said, though, it is interesting what's happening in Scotland because Scotland hasn't binned it yet, and I think that's on. Is it on about 50 products there? So, yeah, they're pushing ahead with it at the moment.
Hugh, all of this coming amid a warning by Professor Tim Lang of City University London, an expert in food policy and food security. Tim Lang telling MPs this week that the government really needs to have some kind of coherent food strategy. It needs to be taking food security and food policy in general far, far more seriously than it is.
Yeah, it does. It's man, it's a broken record, isn't it? It's the lack of a plan. I mean, come on, where's the plan? And why aren't you working together with all the retailers? Why aren't you working with the supply chain? Why aren't you? They're sort of starting to work together with the farmers, but trying to work out how this actual system works and understand it. I think what it does do, interestingly, you talk about price capping. It was tried here. Don't forget, James Callaghan, Prime Minister in the 70s, took over from Wilson before Thatcher came in 79. The inflation was so rampant then, they tried to put a pay cap on, and they tried to regulate the price of staples, and it was an utter disaster. And led us into the winter of discontent. So that's probably an extreme example, but it just goes to show where it goes. But yes, this shows, again, a complete and utter lack of understanding of how the economy works. I mean, it's this whole thing. And actually, to be fair, some farmers are equally as daft when they bang on about supermarket billions. Yes, they make billions, but they turn over tens of billions. And if they're lucky, they make 3% or 5% or 6%. Most people don't get out of bed for less than 15%. Yes, I get some farmers are getting out for bed at minus 10% at the moment, but mainly they're well above 10% if you look over a 10-year average. So it's this complete lack of, it's like 15-year-old spads, special political advisors from the socialist school of, the People's Revolution of Business, coming to the table and saying, I've got a great idea, let's do price capping like they did in Russia. That was a real success back in Stalin's time, wasn't it? Yeah, it's just preposterous. And it just shows, again, how utterly stupid some of these people are, even thinking about it. They're so naive. And yet, at the same time, the market, the people, the real people that add value, that work, that pay tax, that provide services, that provide food, that deliver it, that retail it, that pack it, that market it, are working their butts off, being taxed to heck. I mean, it's bonkers. The whole thing is utterly bonkers. So thankfully, it's been buried and we won't have to talk about that. But actually what we need to talk about is, yes, how do we take the lumps and bumps out of the supply chain? How do we take lumps and bumps from farm level right through to household level? Because I get that households are struggling. I get that food prices are a bigger proportion of household incomes now than they have been for a long time. And also, I suppose the other thing it leads you to think about as well is, where does that leave us? If the government's saying that they're prepared to get retailers to cap pricing, to control food prices, and then they're supposedly they've obviously thought about all the consequences not. Does that then mean that they're willing to look at other things? Because it was mentioned in some of the comms around this, or some of the leaked stuff about it that was going around midweek, that, we'll get them to cap prices and then we'll ease back the packaging tax and we'll ease back all those sort of things. So they won't have to do as much as that. Does that mean that they'll go easier on farmers in terms of some of the regulation they've got lined up there? Does it mean also that they might actually think about some sort of universal payment system to put a baseline revenue into farmers' pockets so they're not going out of business, so your food system doesn't collapse in 5 years' time when most of them have gone bankrupt? I don't know. But it really does open up a can of worms as to how far the government is. I suppose what it reveals is how under pressure they are actually feeling because of what's going on with the Iranian thing and oil supply, fertiliser supply, food supply, and how upset the markets are. So it is quite revealing. It's utterly preposterous, but it is revealing.
The Farmers Weekly Podcast. The Farmers Weekly Podcast.
Now, beef industry leaders have told the supply chain to adopt transparent prices which properly reflect the true cost of beef production, or see family farms go out of business. In an open letter to processors and retailers, the National Beef Association said producers were taking too much of the risk, absorbing rising input costs, market volatility, and constant pressure to deliver more for less. The warning comes in the run-up to Beef Expo, the UK beef industry showcase, which takes place at the end of May at Melton Mowbray Livestock Market in Leicestershire. Earlier, Hugh caught up with MBA Chief Executive Neil Shand and Hugh Brown, Chief Executive of Gillstream Markets, which runs Melton Livestock Mart, and he started by asking Neil to explain the current market situation.
We have a scenario where, almost in the period of a year, £480 has been taken off the value of a carcass. And, no business, family farm, processor, market, or anyone can plan confidently for the future when you've got that kind of volatility ongoing. It's a challenge in place. And, it's not just the price that we saw last year was great, but we lost prime cuts from food service. And that's a big challenge moving forward, and that's something we need to address. And if the current price is part of a reset that leads to further price increments later this year, then that will be positive. But we can't continue to have big chunks of the, say, out-of-home sector that don't have prime cuts on their menus, because that unsettles carcass balance, and that could be a bigger problem if we don't get that reset very quickly.
And also that food service for those prime cuts also obviously very keen and have been bringing in imported product as well. When you see what's happening in America at the moment and the US, the US market just continues to burn, and the analysts there say they see no sign of it slowing up. We really are missing a trick here, aren't we, in terms of optimizing our export potential?
Yes, and there's one key difference between, let's say, the United Kingdom and the United States of America. One currently has a government that actively supports agriculture on all fronts, and the other doesn't. And I'll let everyone else make up their mind which is which. But we have, we should be, and we are exporting. Our export challenge will come from the processors have to look after the home market first, and that will be, that's their number one goal. And if they can't fulfill that, and that will be a challenge if you look at ASTB's numbers later this year when cattle numbers go extremely tight again, they have to look after the retailers that they're aligned to as a number one priority, which might not, leave enough scope for a massive amount of exports to go. Of course, we've had the first shipments of beef arrive in the US, and rumour says that some of their beef is on its way over here, but I've not seen or heard of any of that yet.
I think it'd be pretty expensive as it is if it is coming here. Turning to Beef Expo, Hugh Brown, Melton Mowbray hosting Beef Expo. Big opportunity for you guys, and presumably there's going to be a lot going on at your market site on the 30th of May.
Yeah, we're thrilled to be hosting the event. I think it's the first time, certainly in the modern era, that it's been there. And it's the right time as well, because, as I was saying, Melton's grown threefold in the last 5 years and really thrived and pulled people in from all over the country. Our regular customers come from the Yorkshire border, the North Sea, the M6, and now all the way down to the South Coast. And it will be a great opportunity to showcase what they do, but also show it off to people from further afield, from throughout Britain.
And just give us a feel for what you trade a lot of sheep through there, Hugh, fat cattle, and presumably you're busy with store cattle as well.
Yeah, I think we had a record month last month with over 4,000 cattle through the market, and we are mixed, so it's fairly 50-50 between sheep and cattle, and both are thriving with the interest we're seeing. And cattle, it's clear that although the majority of cattle go through the deadweight direct trade, it's the live weight that has helped to drive the prices forwards in the last few years. And even though the prices are being pulled back by the processors at the moment, it's only 30p a kilo down over the last month in the live market.
And Neil, tell us what you've got going. You've obviously got various seminars as well as all the trade stands going on at Beef Expo. What can we expect to see when we come up to Melton?
Yeah, so we've got, at upwards of 85 trade stands, 15 breed societies, sponsors, political seminars, two key political seminars. One looking at what government's commitment to food security should look like, and a second one debating the value of domestic food production. And some interesting participants in that, including agricultural managers from retailers, and also leading people from Red Tractor, etc., etc. But Expo really is, in the current environment when we've got everything going on, it's one place where we can put producers, processors, retailers, and political representatives from across all parties in the same room, and challenge in both directions and try and come up with the best solutions for the industry, the country going forward.
Yeah, no, it sounds good. And finally, Hugh, I'm looking forward to coming up because I'm told that Melton is one of the few sites left in the country where you're actually in the town centre.
Yes, we are, and we're very proud of our town heritage. The market's been in Melton for over 1,000 years, and made its move out of town over 150 years ago. But obviously, what was out of town then was the very edge of the high street, and we're very fortunate to be connected into the town and connect people to where their food comes from a bit. So you'll have the delights of it being in the rural capital of food, with its pork pies, its Stilton cheese, and all that a town has to offer.
That's Hugh Brown of Gillstream Markets talking to Hugh Broom, and before Hugh Brown, Neil Shand of the National Beef Association. Hugh Broom, the showcase that is Beef Expo taking place at Melton Livestock Market on the 30th of May. This downturn in beef prices, not the same 12 months ago. What a difference the year makes.
Well, it's not horrendous because the price is still up there. It's really bad. I suppose where it's really bad is for people that have to buy store cattle, and if their business is around buying store cattle and then taking them on for sort of 150, 100 days and then taking them on to finish and then processing them. Some of those poor guys are really getting caught with their pants down now because, of course, they were paying crazy top dollar for store cattle 3-4 months ago. And then suddenly in the last, the price has been, it's been tinkling down since the new year, really. But obviously the retail demand has caught up with the buying level. And then the factories are basically saying, look, we've got these fridges full of beef. We don't need to buy as much beef at the moment. And they've utterly slammed the brakes on. They've been dropping the price quite severely. So in some cases, they're offering below £6 a kilo. And then the other thing, which is probably adding more pain, particularly to smaller producers, where they would normally be able to phone up and book cattle in with, say, within a week, 10 days, or speak to fields people that go out from the factories picking cattle. Suddenly, they are being told, oh, no, you can't bring them in for at least 3 weeks. We're not booking anything in for at least another 3 weeks now. We're full. We're on a bare minimum.
Hugh, you are at the sharp end of this as a beef producer. I know. Louise, before we came on air, before we started recording, you pointed out that Hugh wasn't exactly crying a year ago when beef prices were more than £7 a kilo.
Oh, absolutely. Hugh, you weren't crying, were you, when we did a podcast piece on bonkers beef prices? This is just a small correction, isn't it? You've had it pretty good for a while now.
I'm like Louise, I'm not crying. I'm a realist. Look, the market is stressed at the moment because, in some cases, did they overprocess into Easter and then they ended up with more product than they want? The big thing here, it's back to the whole cost of living, lack of growth crisis, because households are tightening their belts. And beef as a protein, if you look at the data, it's being out-competed by the likes of chicken. Where beef mince was a cheap or cheap-ish alternative to chicken, if you were trying to feed a family, suddenly that beef mince looks a lot more expensive than even a couple of chicken breasts. So it's effectively being outpriced by other cheaper proteins. So we've seen that. I mean, the retail data is there for all to see. I think the big thing here is if you put it into the overall context, if you look at it in the long view, bear in mind that beef is one of the longest supply chains until we get into the sort of realms of champagne and vintage wines. From conception to factory, it's getting on for nearly 3 years. In some cases slightly shorter, but it's still a really long lead time compared to most products on supermarket shelves. And I think the real anger here coming from producers and coming from the NFU and the National Beef Association is we've had 40 years of rubbish beef prices where beef farmers have effectively been kept afloat by effectively the subsidy that was coming to them from the government through the CAP. And obviously, we all know what's happened to that. It's whittled away. It's meant that our suckler cow numbers have whittled away because those people aren't prepared to do it anymore. And then we've actually seen some tightness in the market here in the UK, as well as what's happening in the rest of the world. And actually, there was some profit coming back into the job and people have been reinvesting. And it's been amazing. The first time in 30, 40 years, beef farmers are investing in kit. They're investing in stuff to make their life more easy and their businesses more efficient. And then suddenly, from nowhere, there's all these, you can't bring any cattle in for 3 weeks. You can't do this. It's like there's just no intelligence to it. There's no logic to it. If they knew this was coming, could they not have, taken a different path? I know it's not easy running a factory, but the fundamentals as well here is if you look at cattle numbers, they are still tight. We're killing 1% less cattle first quarter of this year than we were last year. Globally, beef is super tight. We know what's happening in America. It's on fire in America and it's contracting, ever thus. So it's a bizarre scenario and it's not helpful. The chances are, numbers will get tight, demand will rise, and the price will come back. But this is an unhelpful correction in the marketplace when people are hedging more money than ever on investing in stock. To have this then ripped away, it will be the last straw for some people.
The Farmers Weekly Podcast. The Farmers Weekly Podcast.
You're listening to the Farmers Weekly Podcast. Welcome along wherever you're listening to us from. You can email us podcast@fwi.co.uk. And if you're in the UK itself, you can message us by texting the word farm, followed by a message to 88440. Some good news this week. A new sentencing guideline for hare-coursing offences has been described as an important step in strengthening the response to what is a serious rural crime. Due to come into effect on the 1st of June, the guidelines designed to ensure courts fully recognise the harm caused by hare-coursing offences. It includes taking into account factors such as the use of social media to promote offending and breaches of community protection notices. Essex farmer Matthew Register has been the victim of more than 200 hare-coursing incidents in just 8 months. He's been assaulted 11 times by hare-coursers and had more than £30,000 worth of damage caused to his crops.
We've suffered 198 incidents of hare-coursing since the season started when crops were harvested at the beginning of July. It's had a huge effect on your mental health. The fear, the worry, the intimidation that you're very likely to suffer when you go out, and also the damage, £30,000 worth of damage caused by hare-coursers coming in onto the farm here.
Essex farmer Matthew Register. Now, Essex police have pledged to take hare-coursing more seriously after a meeting with Matthew and the NFU. NFU Vice President Robyn Munton.
It was really positive to hear about some of the things they're already putting in place, particularly around call handler training and the seizure of dogs to ensure that we can disrupt the crimes that are occurring, and to genuinely hear from the policing team that they recognise the impact that this is having on members. It's harrowing to hear stories from members about being assaulted and intimidated, with one member even talking about being left for dead. Nobody should have to live like that. We wouldn't put up with it in an urban setting, so we should not be putting up with it in a rural setting.
That's NFU Vice President Robyn Munton. Louise, good to hear this guideline coming into effect and that police are going to be taking a firmer approach.
Yeah, that is good news. I mean, this is a real ongoing problem, isn't it? And, in certain parts of the country, and especially over in the east, yeah, it just happens all the time. And it's horrific, really, for the families involved. And, you hear about farmers being threatened and beaten up, and it's just really, really unpleasant. So it's high time that they got tougher on this, and it sounds as though that's about to happen. So I'm really pleased about that, and I think a lot of other farmers will be too.
Yeah, not before time as well. We know how stubbornly persistent rural crime can be, not just when it comes to offences such as hare-coursing, but also indeed farm theft. Hugh, theft of red diesel, for example, up big time since the war in Iran. Security firm Deter Tech reporting that incidents of fuel theft have increased by 120% since the start of spring.
Yeah, look, no surprises there, and it was bound to happen. I think anyone that's into thievery will take the opportunity, and with fuel prices as high as they have been, obviously they've eased back a little bit the last few weeks. Who knows where they're going to end up and where it's going to bottom out or where it's going to settle? And there will be people that obviously red diesel is in lesser circulation now, as we said before, than previous years when it was used by building sites and lots of other plant. Many legitimate people wouldn't use, obviously, red diesel in building site plant because, one, they're good legitimate citizens, and two, if they've hired the machine and it goes back with red in the lines, they get massive charges from the hire companies now because they're only meant to run on white diesel. But there will be some people, though, clearly, who don't give a Scooby about the colour of the diesel, and they'll run their vehicles on it, they'll run machines on it, they'll do whatever. So it's no great surprise. And look, at the end of the day, people just need to be vigilant and take that into account, how and where they store their fuel, make sure it's unattractive for people to try and steal.
Yeah, red diesel very much in demand and prices high too. A little bit of good news on that price though, Louise. The duty on red diesel down by a third in a government announcement designed to ease the pain for farmers. It won't make much difference, a 3.7 pence reduction, but much welcome nonetheless.
Yeah, that's right. And this starts on June the 15th, I think it is, and it goes through until the end of the year. So a bit of respite on that. As you say, 3.7 pence thereabouts. So it's cut from just over 10 pence to 6.4 pence per litre. So it's good news. It's a little bit of help, isn't it, with everything, all the other things that have been going up in price. But we've got to be pleased about it, and it's good that they've recognised they needed to do something.
Yeah, Hugh, a 3.7 pence per litre drop, although the price per litre overall has more or less doubled in recent weeks. The government, I guess, giving it with one hand, but farmers still having to fork out a lot more even so.
Yeah, the last couple of months they doubled. I mean, they come back a bit, obviously, the last few weeks. June the 15th, is that some sort of prophetic date when they think that all of the oil reserves that we're currently refining our way through are finally going to run out? And whilst there might be a 3.7p discount on red tariff, on red duty, there might not actually be any diesel available to enjoy the 3.7 duty relief on. No, I'm being very pessimistic now. I'm sure they've thought about that supply chain, as we discussed last week, and there will be bountiful supplies of 3.7p cheaper diesel, and that all of the supply companies will do their best to keep those prices low and won't absorb anything that they shouldn't. But yeah, it is challenging. And also, good news as well, that if you're a child, you can travel on a bus free during August. And the best news of all is that you can go to a theme park and the VAT during the summer holidays will only be 10% on all of your rides. So even if you do run out of diesel, rest assured you can go and ride on a roller coaster a few pence cheaper than you would have done today.
Well, there we go, the topsy-turvy world of the red diesel market. Hugh, the other commodity markets, what's happening there this week?
Thank you very much, Johan. Beef price edges back again this week. 604.4 back from 612.6. Year ago, 687.9. It just come off that record £7 plus high that we saw in early May last year. Finished steer deadweight 338.2. That's back 3p on the week. To the sheep rings and some strength. The strength continues in the sheep job. Deadweight SQQ this week 870.9. That's gone on. It's gone up. Getting on for nearly 40p on the week. So some real strength there. The live weight drops a penny, 415.3. Pig price stands on this week. So that's some good news because that has been dropping week on week on week on week. 178.3 is the deadweight SPP for this week. To the arable markets, and it's just a little bit of tweaking here and there, but not as strong as we saw last week, where we saw some values really come in the last couple of weeks. Feed wheat 181.20, so that's dropped about 50p on the week, but it's still substantially stronger, 21 quid heavier than it was last year when it was only 160. So take some solace in that. Milling wheat 197.50. That's got 10 quid nearly on, 5 quid nearly on the week. So that's good. Feed barley pretty much stands on, although it's dropped 30p, 154.20. Oilseed rape continues to gain, but only by £1 this week. Last week went up by about 10 or 15 quid, 483.20 spot price for this week. Feed peas 175.60 and feed beans 226.40. Those have all edged up ever so slightly. Diesel price, Wednesday morning ring round, puts the diesel price at 100.97 pence per litre. It's actually gone up about 0.4 of a pence per litre since last week, but that's obviously significantly more than where it was a year ago when it was 63.06.
The Farmers Weekly Podcast. The Farmers Weekly Podcast.
And finally, with farm input costs going through the roof, wouldn't it be good if some of the more expensive ones were available free, or at least were much, much cheaper? Maybe something like nitrogen fertiliser. Well, great minds think alike, and a group of farmers has come together to see if they can make it happen. They're part of an ADOPT project to see if fertiliser, or something like it, can be made from water and air. It's called Firewater, and we thought it sounded crazy too. So Louise and I caught up with Tim Ellis, one of the farmers involved, and asked him all about it.
So the first ADOPT project, with Simon Craven and Daniel Kindred as our facilitator, is just testing the basic principle. Can Firewater replace a certain percentage of your standard nitrogen fertiliser, whether it's urea or ammonia? The second one, which has just been successful, I think last week, is looking at the agronomics of Firewater. So hopefully reducing herbicides, fungicide use. We're sort of very much, our eyes are very open to this, that, it does seem too good to be true, but there's definitely something there. And we're just trying to quantify it and make it understandable for UK farmers, really. And it's not going to be straightforward, I'm sure, but, we're excited about it.
This is almost like water into wine, but for farmers, isn't it?
Yes, it does seem a bit like magic. and to be honest, I was sceptical to start with. And then my partner in this venture, Simon Craven, who's in Yorkshire, we started looking into it. We visited Kentucky to meet the manufacturers, and we really sort of started to see there might be actually something in this. They've got thousands and thousands of acres in America under this scheme, and it seems to be working. And I realise that America is different production-wise to the UK, but we've got to look at these things to see where we could benefit really as farmers.
And how does it work exactly?
So the principle is, it's a long-established scientific principle. When you have a lightning storm, the electrical charge separates the nitrogen atom from the atmosphere and it falls in the rain. So there's a term called green lightning. So not that we get that many lightning storms in this country, but in America where they get bigger storms, larger landmass, they know that after a thunderstorm, they'll have a greening of crops. So the guys in America have developed a cold fusion plasma machine, which essentially takes the water, uses a vacuum pump, passes electricity through it, and then comes out the bottom, water enriched with nitrates.
So this is about making your own nitrogen fertiliser. Is it much cheaper?
It's a lot cheaper. It's not quite the fertiliser, it's an equivalent. So we think it will replace a certain amount of the fertiliser. We hope up to 75%. It's not a fertiliser per se, it's water that has been changed, restructured, oxygenated, energised, and has higher nitrates in it. Electrical-wise, if you have renewables, it's free. If you're on a standard electric meter, we reckon it'll cost about £2,000 a year to produce roughly about 140,000 litres of this product. And you put it on at about, we think, we're still experimenting, between 70 and 100 litres a hectare in your normal nitrogen applications. So 4 applications a year. It's literally an inert liquid. So if you want to apply it with other biology, we're looking into that. Herbicides, fungicides, you can use it. So hopefully it will help reduce passes as well. So you're fertilising and doing other jobs all at the same time.
That's Tim Ellis, farmer Tim Ellis, turning water, well, not quite into wine, not quite into fertiliser, but certainly something very much like it, Louise. An innovative ADOPT project, although it does in a way sound almost too good to be true.
Yeah, it does. And with a name like that, it sounds like a sort of trendy alcohol brand, doesn't it? But no, I mean, this is an interesting development, isn't it? And I'm obviously there's still some research work to be done and a lot more to discover about it. But producing nitrogen fertiliser using only air, water and electricity, well, fantastic, isn't it? So you end up, don't you, with this, I think they call it plasma-activated water. So what their machine or bit of technology rather does is it splits the nitrogen molecules that you find naturally in the air, and it then bonds them with oxygen to form nitrates, which are suspended in water. So the way that they describe it actually is that it mimics natural lightning strikes to fix nitrogen into a usable plant-available nitrate. So, it's definitely one to watch, isn't it? As we said, there's going to be quite a lot more trials work done on it, and they need to discover how to use it in programs that we have now and at what rate you need to use it. I mean, obviously, applying a water isn't very difficult. You've got the kit already to do it. A lot of farms are making their own electricity anyway. So the cost of doing this is going to be very low. So it's definitely going to be of interest, especially given fertiliser prices at the moment. So, yeah, one to watch, and we'll have to get them back on the podcast when we know a bit more about it.
Something for you, Hugh?
It's Firewater. It sounds positively Victorian, doesn't it? It's like the devil in a jar will make your wheat grow. No, it's honestly no. It does sound, the name sounds positively Victorian in my head, but potentially, if this does what it says on the tin, which when you look on the website, it says that I think it can. One machine over the space of a year can make 49 tons of nitrogen, which, if that is the case, and you can do that and literally take electric and water and zap it and pop that into a tank and then use it, it's phenomenal, isn't it? I mean, in terms of making our farm businesses more resilient, in terms of cutting what it could do to the carbon footprint of arable farms or all farms, not just arable farms, but arable farmers. If you look, the biggest thing on their emissions profile is nitrogen, or bought in fertiliser, artificial. It's pretty big for livestock farmers as well. And aside all of that, if it brings resilience to the farmyard and this little machine can just tootle away in the corner, powered by the solar panels on the barn roof, 365 days a year, it makes a bit here and there and stacks it up in a tank ready to use in the spring. Phenomenal. Brilliant. Bring it on. I want to know more. Where can I get one, Johan?
Well, indeed. Where can you get one? Well, not commercially available yet, not as I understand it anyway, but we will put a link to that ADOPT project on the show notes page of this episode of the Farmers Weekly podcast. The next best thing to free fertiliser, if it works, of course. But that is about it for this week's episode of the Farmers Weekly podcast. We do hope you've enjoyed what you've heard. If you have, please do, as always, subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. And if you've really enjoyed enjoyed what you've heard, please do leave us a 5-star review. We'll be back next week with all the latest news, views and analysis of all the big stories affecting UK agriculture. But for now, until next week, I'm Johan Tasker.
I'm Louise Impey.
And I'm Hugh Brown.
Thank you for listening.